Well, the problem with going third in these events is that many of the things that you were just waiting to say get said very eloquently and probably in a more forceful way than I could say them. So I certainly second everything that David and Barry have both said. And I'll try to take us off in a slightly different direction. Before I come to these things, and those of you who have spoken at things probably have had the same experience. The night before, you think, what can I say tomorrow? What's kind of new, or how can I bring this together in a new way or in an effective way? And what I find happens with me, and I don't know if this is a Freudian admission, but when I sleep the night before, I almost always wake up in the morning, and I jump up, and I found the closest piece of paper I could find, which was a paper plate left over from last night's watching Jon Stewart roast our great former governor. And I made a few notes, and I want to start with a couple things about that, and then I want to shift a little bit to the work that we're doing at Fort Drum that some of you have worked with us on and most of you know about. Some political wise guy a long time ago, probably Eugene Debs or someone like that, brilliant guy actually, he said that do we really in this country have one party, but it has two branches, and that's the Democrats and the Republicans. And that's, I think, a pretty accurate statement. I just want to give you a little bit of an example of why I think right now we could see that to be the case. 40 years ago, right now, 1968, we were just entering a very tightly contested presidential election. And those of you in the room who, like me, have gray hair or thinning hair or both, remember this very well. And at that time, we had the Democrats defending the war in the person of Hubert Humphrey. And LBJ, of course, had announced that he was not going to run again, and hoping probably to deflect enough of the opposition onto him so that the Democrats could hope to survive it. I think that's generally the way his resignation is seen today. And on the other side, we had a well-known peacenik, Richard Nixon, I kid you not, who said, among other things, I have a secret plan. Secret. Now, only if you elect me will it be revealed. He was running as anti-war candidate, more or less, more or less. And so here we see 40 years later, we have, oh, the other thing about Nixon is interesting, I just got to throw this in, is there's a really pretty interesting book that's still around worth reading called The Selling of the President. And this book is by a guy named Joe McGinnis, who's a real sharp guy, wrote a lot of other books, but I think this is his best. And in The Selling of the President, he explains how a shift occurred in that election that was fundamental, what people nowadays would call a paradigm shift in the way we elect our highest official. And to summarize very greatly, he picked up on the theme of Marshall McLuhan, another very smart guy from Canada, actually. And Marshall McLuhan said we're in an era now when the medium has become the message. And you've all heard that phrase, and it's sort of a commonplace now. But if you delve into it, although you see there was actually quite a profound thought. And I won't try to parse it all and explain it, and I'm not even sure I understand it all. But the point of it was that Nixon realized that he had been seen as an old-style politician, take people down to the bare metal, crude, harsh. Remember, he was defeated in California and running for governor there, and he became very bitter and lashed out at the media. And so by 1968, he was repackaged. And it's interesting, the people that one was Dave mentioned is Haldeman and a couple of the others. And guess where these guys came from? The Disney empire. And they sat down with Tricky Dick, as we called him then, and they said, you've got to change your whole approach. And so essentially what happened was it became a campaign that was largely carried out in terms of debate as a televised exchange of symbols. And I won't carry this any further than this, but if you look today, and I have to admit, I turned on the TV the night of the South Carolina primary. You probably all did too. And I have to admit, hard, uncompromising, leftist, radical that I am, that I had a lump in my throat when I listened to Barack Obama. And Barack Obama, for two reasons. The main one, I think, is because it was amazing to me, having been in the civil rights movement, that someone could stand up in South Carolina, the home of Strom Thurmond, hundreds of lynchings and racist outrages, too many to number. And he could stand up there and give the speech he gave. But here's the thing, here's the warning that I offer. There was never a better practitioner of the media is the message than Mr. Obama. He's a master. And I don't know, I think some of it is just innate to him, and probably some of you in the room will vote for him, and I might too. But he is a master of that media message. What is the point of all this? The point is that when you try to dig down beneath it, to what is he going to do about one of the reasons that we're all here this weekend? The war, oh that, and the war in Afghanistan, oh that. The answer is, je ne sais pas. Who the hell knows? Nobody knows. And I'm not sure he knows, but I'll tell you one thing, and Hillary's even worse. I won't even go into her. She's even worse. Hillary gave an interview. This may have slipped some of you that don't daily read the New York, I don't have to daily read the New York Times like I do. She gave an interview with the editorial board of the New York Times 6 months ago. You might remember this, you guys. And she said, I can live with a permanent party in Iraq of 60 to 70,000 troops. That's Hillary 6, 7 months ago. So the fact is that neither of these people have any real plan, any real idea, or maybe, probably, I suspect, any real commitment to doing much of anything about this war. And so where does that leave us? It leaves us with the fact that, and I would argue also that we don't have the peace movement we had then. And it's not just to beat on ourselves. The peace movement in the '68 period was a big tent. Women's movements. The civil rights movement was alive. It's very interesting that Martin Luther King is still mentioned here as many times as he is tonight. He deserves that. The civil rights movement was alive and blazing in every area of this country and in the armed forces as well. The most exciting part to me of the film Sir No Sir was when he goes to Vietnam and he captures the dynamism, the militance of mostly black African American troops. It was, that to me just said so much. And I really had the feeling there was, as Dave really alluded to, there's much more of that which really has never been told, and very true, has never really been understood. That was a big, big movement. And Dave alluded to this fellow in this article, not the article, but the mood of the command. This is guy Colonel Robert Heinl, H-E-I-N-L, and he wrote an article, a very important article in Armed Forces Journal called The Death of the Army. That was published in 1971. If you want to go back, and I have a citation in my book here if you want to look at. That's worth reading just in itself. And basically what he does is tick off everything that had occurred by 1971 in the U.S. military, and the things that these gentlemen have already referred to. Massive desertions, massive resistance, massive combat refusals, fraggings. 100,000 people deserted from the U.S. Military in 1970 alone. 100,000 people. That's a big, big. That's about 6 brigades. That's a lot. And so that was the kind of thing that the military was terrified of. That's what, as David said very well, brought them to the bargaining table with the Vietnamese. And it must be said, the bravery, the courage of the Vietnamese. That has to be said. They're stoic. They're stoic. So, where are we? We today are in a place, let me finish the big tent business for a second. Women's movements, civil rights movements, labor movements, remember that? That was before Michigan, the state alone, lost 400,000 industrial jobs in the last 20 years. A labor movement that was vigorous. Not the guy this place is named after. He was an SOB, but many others. I can't believe we're meeting in his hall. I mean, it's amazing. If anyone ever spun in their grave, he's spinning tonight, I guarantee you. That's like an old fart, but I will. Okay. So, we stand here today. We don't have that kind of vitality and dynamism in our movements. We don't have, for a lot of reasons. One, because the civil rights movement made a lot of progress, and that's good. The women's movement, well, I'll leave that to women to decide, but there certainly is progress made there. And in the other movements, the labor movement, that's a whole other story to talk about some other time. So, what are we left with? We were left with Tweedledum and Tweedledee. It's just that now, and to complete the picture of the fall this year, on the pro-war side, we got the GOP this time. And he's going to be pounding his 5.5 years in that. I mean, the thing that amazes me about him, I sound like Lewis Black now, but the thing that amazes me about him, I love Lewis Black, by the way. I love him. The thing about him is no one ever says to him, how the hell did you end up in the prison camp? I mean, what were you doing? I mean, were you just flying a nice a trip of tourists over to Phnom Penh? What was it? No, not exactly. I mean, in some ways, he's lucky he was taken prisoner. And many American troops could tell you about many Vietnamese that didn't have the same good fortune, actually. So, but that's beside the point now. He's going to be there in the fall, rah-rahing the war. Let's stay, what did he say the other day? We may have to be there another 100 years. 100 years? That's a hell of a long time. Well, even in Germany and Japan, in Japan we're not there much anymore, but even in Germany we've only been there 50. 100? Wow.